Hi, my name is Jan Owens, and today I'm going to talk to you about blind spots to bottom line and how project costing can improve profitability in your firm. I am co-founder, CFO, and president of Accounted. We are the outsourced accounting department for A&E Firms. Our team provides the bookkeeping, accounting, financial reporting, and advisory services to help firms across the U.S. gain greater visibility, make more informed decisions, and improve the profitability in their firms. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I am a two-time CFO of the Year award winner working with small and mid-sized businesses. And throughout my 30-year plus career, I have seen the same thing over and over again, where businesses are struggling to become and remain profitable, and it's based on something that I refer to as the visibility gap. I believe that having this gap and plugging the gap and being able to have insights into projects early on results in making smarter decisions and being able not only to protect, but also to improve the profitability within your firm. Because without project costing, you do not have real-time insights into what's happening with your projects, which means that when you find out there's problems, it's usually too late to correct them. So with no real-time visibility, many A&E firms don't discover project problems until it's too late to correct them. And I have an example for you. We had a client, about a 10-person architecture firm, who they thought a project was performing really well, because the client was paying their bills, the client was happy. They implemented project costing and they realized most of the way through the project that they had already spent 130% of their budgeted hours, but the project was only 75% complete. The issue wasn't that they were doing bad work. The issue was that they didn't have visibility into the project and they had no idea that the project was overrunning. And unfortunately, the remaining fee was not enough to cover the outstanding work that still needed to be completed. So the project ultimately finished at a loss. And the owner said that the most frustrating part of that project was not having insights into the project earlier that would allow them to, of course, correct. So before I get into more details about the visibility gap and how you can turn that gap into ways that you can improve the profitability in your firm, I want to dispel a few myths about project costing. I think the first myth that I see all the time is that people say, we don't need project costing because we have spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are okay, but it's another place, a manual place that has to be updated. It has to be validated. Data has to sync in between multiple places before it can be used, which means you don't have real-time data. I have a great example of a client of ours that came to us with his number one issue was that he spent 1 week of every single month creating invoices for his clients, a whole week. So he was spending 12 weeks per year, the principal of the firm, on what was essentially an administrative task. And the reason he was doing that is because it was all on spreadsheets. He was the only one who could manipulate the data and pull it from multiple spreadsheets and QBO in order to generate the invoices. So not only was it a giant time suck, it also really put his firm in peril because he was the only one who could do it. And his family. His family relied on him to take care of them and to provide for him. And if something happened to him, not only was he not there for his family, his firm could not survive without him. So he also did not invoice when phases were complete. It was such a pain. He waited to invoice until once a month, which meant that he was sometimes finishing a phase, waiting 3 or 3.5 weeks before invoicing that phase out for the project. So the solution was we helped him implement Factor AE. It now only takes him a couple of hours to invoice his projects. Staff members can invoice projects as well. And he's able to invoice his projects much earlier because he invoices immediately when a phase is complete. And so as a result, his cash flow is also improved. Another common myth is that we are simply too small. You're never too small to benefit for better information. Small firms do not become large firms overnight. It happens a very methodical, logical way. And having access to data that helps you make informed decisions means that your firm is much more likely to grow profitably than if you don't have that information. A lot of people think it's too expensive. And this is one that I really feel strongly about. The investment in project costing is often far less than the cost of one project that has overrun its budget. I have another example with a 6-person firm. They had about $2 million of revenue, and the software cost them $180 a month. So that's around $2,000 per year for project management software. Their target gross profit was 60%. If they have even a minor slippage in their gross profit of 5%, due to lack of project costing and lack of visibility, that costs them $100,000 a year. That means that their return on investment is $97,000. For every dollar invested in project management software, their return is $46.30. So it's really hard to say that project costing is too expensive if you look at what the negative side effects of not project costing could cost you. Another common complaint or myth is that it's too complicated. Purpose-built A&E tools like Factor simplify project visibility. It replaces spreadsheets. It replaces multiple systems and manual processes and duplicate data entry. It actually simplifies things. It's not more complicated. Other folks also say, we don't need to worry about profitability and project costing until the project's done, and we'll look at it all when the project is done. Once a project is complete, the lost profit is gone for good. You really have very little, if any, ways to recoup that profit. So it's essential that you have project visibility as the project is being performed so that you can course correct, and you can course correct swiftly. Imagine driving I'm from Portland to San Diego while you're only looking in the rear view mirror. Not having project costing visibility real time is exactly like doing that. Another common myth is that folks say we've outgrown QuickBooks and we need a full ERP system. Many A&E firms can gain visibility into project costing by simply integrating a project costing system to QuickBooks. You don't need to throw out QuickBooks and start all over again. QuickBooks can remain the brain for the financial statements, and you can have specialized project costing software that clamps onto QuickBooks to give you a very robust set of information. One more myth, it's just about time tracking. People seem to think that time tracking their own employees is all that project costing is. That is not project costing. Project costing is internal time, it's external time, so all of your consultants, it's reimbursable expenses, it's tracking change orders, it's tracking things like write-offs and billing delays. All of that is rolled up in project costing and can affect profitability. So project costing allows you to track all those costs. I have an example of one of our clients that they do large projects for the government. They also had a university project where the university required them to obtain additional insurance. The insurance cost was $36,000 per year for every year of the life of the contract, which was a 4-year contract. Before project costing was established, that bill came in from the insurance carrier. It got posted to overhead expense, like most insurance bills, and it never got billed to the client. After they implemented project costing and they tracked all costs to projects, the project manager saw that this was an expense on their project. They were able to invoice the client for it, and the client paid for it. Otherwise, in the past, those had just gotten expensed, and that was lost profit. So now that we've dispelled some of the myths about project costing, I would like to talk a little bit about why project costing leads to better profitability inside A&E firms. I think the biggest thing that I've already touched on, but I want to just talk about a little bit more, is that it allows you to identify problems earlier. The sooner you know a project is off track, the sooner you can get it back on track. And it's really just that simple. The second thing is understanding what work is truly profitable. Not all work is equally profitable. Some clients, some different markets are more profitable than others. And project costing helps you identify those projects so you can put your resources towards obtaining more of those projects. Another example, we had a client who they chase large, high volume, very high profile contracts, and they also perform less creative private work. They implemented project costing where 100% of the costs get posted to the project. And the result was that they realized that these large profile government contracts that we were always chasing were far less profitable than the private projects. And they really had no idea why. The fees were higher. It seems like they should be making more money. However, what they didn't account for was the extra project management time, the extra administrative time, collection delays, very complicated invoicing requirements, and all of those things add up. And they didn't account for any of those things in their original fee structure. So project costing gave management the tools to finally realize what the project managers have been saying for a long time, that these projects are a pain and they're high, these clients are high maintenance and it's costing us more money. And now they had tangible proof to know exactly how much it was costing them. Another thing that leads to higher profitability is improving your pricing accuracy. Project costing gives you a continuous feedback loop, which can be provided to estimators. So you can see what's going well, what's not going well. That information can then make better informed decisions for the next project so that you do know how to accurately price them moving forward. Project costing also helps you improve staffing efficiency. This is another really big point. Oftentimes firms and smaller firms, I see they don't always have the right people on the projects at the right time. We had a client that was a design firm who, when they implemented project costing, they realized that they have one of their principal designers was working on projects, and they really shouldn't have been originally expected to work on that project. But when deadlines got tight, they jumped in and they ended up working on the project. That principal could bill out at $200 an hour, and they were routinely performing work that was billing out at $75 an hour, which means that they were losing out on $125 per hour of revenue if they could have assigned that principal to other work. So improving staffing efficiency by being able to see project requirements for staffing and being able to place the right people to do the right work at the right time is very critical to maintaining profitability in your projects. The next point is reducing revenue leakage. Revenue leakage is anything that you're simply not invoicing for. You're doing the work, but for one reason or another, you're not invoicing for it. Project costing helps you fill that gap and reduce the ability for things to fall through the cracks, because you project cost everything, all of your employees' time, all of your sub-consultants, all of your fees, permits, reimbursable expenses, all those things get project costed, and so they're visible to the project manager. So another example I had where an architecture firm discovered that this just happened, $60,000 worth of reimbursable expenses didn't get invoiced out to a project. The project manager was new to the company, and they didn't realize that those expenses should be billed out and that they could be recouped. So we had access to their profitability reports and were able to identify that the expense was there, but the revenue wasn't there. They were then able to go back, invoice the client, and recoup that $60,000. Without project costing, they would not have been able to see that. So why then does project costing lead to better profitability? It allows you to improve your billing discipline. When you know exactly where a project stands, it's easier to bill on time and keep cash moving. Real-time project costing will show you when a phase is complete, which means that you can bill immediately. You're not waiting till the end of the month. It also allows you to forecast your cash more accurately. The better you understand your project pipeline and future billings, the fewer surprises you're going to have later on when it comes to cash flow. We have a firm they're a rapidly growing engineering firm. They won 3 big projects in 1 quarter, and they were ecstatic. Their pipeline looked great. They had plenty of work for all of their employees, and they were going to need to be hiring. And they thought were going to have good margin on these projects. The problem was when they actually charted out the revenue through the ability of having full project costing and being able to see when the revenue was going to be invoiced and when it was likely to be collected, they realized that they had a 3-month gap where they were going to be extending services internally and externally, but they weren't going to be paid. And because it was 3 projects at the same time, it was a substantial gap in cash. So it gave them the ability to actually go out to their bank. They negotiated an increase in their credit line, and they were able to use the credit line to bridge that 3-month gap until the revenue started coming in on these projects. Without project costing and without forecasting in that way, they never would have been able to see that cash gap in advance, and they would have been left scrambling when the time came to make payroll. So this gives you some idea of that there's a longer list than this, but these are kind of the high points of different ways where you can improve your firm's profitability and the benefits of project costing. And just a couple of parting things is that, the biggest firms aren't necessarily the most profitable. The most profitable firms are the firms that have the clearest visibility, and they act on that visibility quickly. And the goal is to be able to see which projects are making money, which projects are losing money, why, and what do we do about it today? And that's what project costing allows you to do. So thank you for listening and for visiting. I'll be here again tomorrow at the Factor booth. I'm sticking around if anyone wants to chat with me after this presentation. I also have a 2-minute CFO assessment specifically for A&E firms. You can scan the QR code and it will take you to a quick assessment where I will be able to give you your profit maximization readiness score. And from that, I will be able to give you a report that shows you where you have areas where you might think about making some improvements that has the opportunity to impact your firm's profitability, and along with some actionable items that you can easily follow. And I'm happy to meet with you to go through those results as well. So to get started with that assessment, just click the QR code, and I hope to chat with you again soon.